Welcome to my Ogre tutorial series. This episode will be Infantry Terrain Effects. So infantry in the game, there's currently two types, basic infantry and Marines. They're identical in all ways except Marines cost double to purchase and have special stats for water. And we'll go over water details a little bit later. The important part here is all infantry, it costs one movement per hex to move into every terrain. Water is the only exception, and like I said, we'll talk about that in a little bit. That's where the Marines are really useful. So, pick any one of these squads. Marine can move 2 hexes. Basic infantry, 2 hexes. So, no matter what infantry I pick, they can move 2 hexes per turn. Now, you'll notice I've got different groups here. So I've got 1, 2, and 3 squads. The number of squads that you can put together in a group is up to 3, and it changes their stats. So a single squad of infantry has an attack and defense of 1. 2 squads have an attack and defense of 2, and attack and defense of 3 for 3 squads. The Marines are identical. 1, 2, 2, and 3, 3. The only difference you'll see here is their value. A single squad of Marine battlesuits is worth 4 victory points, whereas single squad is worth 2 for just regular infantry. So the reason why the Marines cost twice as much is because they do not have any restrictions in water. And like I said, we'll get into that in a little bit. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is a special characteristic of infantry for moving around. So, like we were saying earlier, infantry can move 2 hexes per turn. They don't care about terrain. You'll notice this squad here, the ridge, it doesn't care. It can go right over it where most units can't. But one thing that may not be obvious is these 3 tanks here, there's actually infantry in the hex along with it. So if you look, I've got super heavy, and there's 2 squads of infantry along with it. Same thing for the light tank, which has a single squad, and the heavy tank, which has a single squad. The reason why they don't show up as a stack is because they're actually riding the tanks. And what that allows them to do is they can actually hitch a ride on units that move faster. So from here, I can pick the heavy tank and it can move 3 hexes. But what that means is the infantry get a bonus. They're moving a 3rd hex along with them. So they actually show up in the hex along with that tank. So they're able, even though they can only move 2 hexes per turn, they can actually move the number of hexes that the tank can move because they're using its movement. Same thing for the super heavy. Moves 3 hexes where normally they can only move 2 if they're infantry. And the same thing for the light tank. 3 hexes. Infantry get a road bonus for not only roads, but railroads as well. So this squad here, because they started their movement on the railroad, normally they can only move 2, but they can move a 3rd hex to go 3 hexes for their turn. And an example of road movement here, 1, 2, 3. And this is where the difference between a Marine and a regular infantry become very apparent. So normal infantry can move 2 hexes per turn, but it costs 2 to move into water. So the best he can do is 1 hex per turn moving into the water. So I can't get across to here. Whereas the Marine, they do not have this restriction. This is why they cost twice as much, because this single unit can actually move through water the same way as if it was walking on land. That's why they're expensive, and they're really pretty handy when you do that. The other advantage is they get a defensive bonus while they're in water. So Marines get a ×2 multiplier, whereas the basic infantry do not. And you can see the difference here. Water defense ×2 for their status effect. The infantry has no such bonus. And the Marines also can fire while they're in the water, whereas the infantry cannot. They're swimming, they can't really do anything. So again, this is why the infantry cost as much as they do. All right, where infantry really shine is when you start looking at their defensive bonuses from being in different types of terrain. And this is the real part of terrain effects for infantry. So normally you'll see clear terrain, single squad is a defensive 1, 2 squads together, defensive 2, 3 squads are a defensive 3. So when you're talking about this, the more squads you can put together at the same time, the better your defensive value is going to be. So for example, if I take this infantry and I combine it with another squad over here, so we're going to go from 1 to 2. He had a defensive 1, but now the combined grouping has a defensive 2. So 1, 2. And you can do that with up to 3. So if I take this infantry and I combine it with these, they'll go from a defense of 2 to a defense of 3. So that's one of the key pieces with infantry to keep them alive. You don't want them to be single squads or double any more than you absolutely have to. Where the magic really happens is when you start looking at how the terrain affects that. So if we look at a squad of 3, has a defense of 3. But if we put that same squad of 3 into a swamp, now you're looking at something that has a defense of 6, because the swamp defense for infantry is ×2. The same thing happens for forests. They also give a ×2 multiplier to infantry defense. So you can see, we've gone from something that is a defense of 3 to a defense of 6. And the real one that you got to watch out for is if we take that squad of 3 and we put it in a town. That 3 squads in a town hex now has a defense of 9. And just to give you an idea of what that means, if we start talking about being able to attack that squad of infantry, we have to bring in all of these guys. So let's grab this whole section here. We'll bring them in close enough to attack. And let's see what happens when we do attack. So now we're talking about attacking this infantry. It's got a defense of 9. So if we wanted to attack these are all G.E.Vs in here. So if we add 1, we've got an attack at 2 against a defense at 3. It's a 1 to 2. You use 2 G.E.Vs, now we've got 4 to 3. That's a 1-to-1 attack. So that's normally what we're trying to get for. And then we can go up. So this grouping of 5 G.E.Vs can get up to 10 to 3 or get a 3-to-1 attack to destroy this entire squad. But if we do the same thing to one of these other groups. So let's say we cancel this and we decide we're going to attack this squad instead. They have a defense of 9. So now 1 GEV, no effect. 2 GEVs, no effect. 3 GEVs, more than half of our attack has been used, and just to get to a 1 to 2 where we need a 6 to hit this. You can add more, 8, use all 5 GEVs, 10 attack strength to get to a 9 defense. So now we're up to the 1 to 1 attack where we only needed 2 GEVs to do the same thing here. This is why infantry is really powerful on this map, because all of these terrain types, that's the type of thing that you end up with. So we waste 5 GEVs, and a roll of 4, all it did was disable, which just reduces the infantry by 1. So that's an awful lot of attack strength that was necessary to do very, very minimal damage. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about water and the terrain bonus that you get for that and why Marines cost as much as they do. We saw already that Marines are able to move in the water like they're walking on land. That's part of the reason why they're expensive. The other part is because they get a defensive bonus while they're in the water, and regular infantry does not. So if we go to do an attack on this infantry, you'll notice that it doesn't show anything special. So you've got 3 squads, their defense is 3. It's just like they were on land. So in order for us to attack that and get to our normal 1-to-1 attack, or roll a 5 or 6, we only need to use 2 GEVs to get that 1-to-1 attack. So that's a 5 or 6, and we can try to take a shot at it. All right, so 5 or 6, got a 6, great. But the Marines, on the other hand, you'll notice that they get a ×2 defense in water. So they're really good in the water. Not only can they move, but they get the defensive bonus. So that same 3 squads, for us to attack it and get a 1-to-1 attack, we need to throw 3 GEVs at it to get to a 6-to-6. So 2, 4, 6 against a defense of 6. Of course, rolling 6s always helps. But that's why the Marines cost as much as they do, is because of the extra bonus that they get with the water. So that was Infantry Terrain Effects. I hope it was helpful. If you'd like to see more, then check out my Terrain Effects playlist linked above. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.